going from one football talk to another football talk. We have someone who didn't really know about football, but she won a whole football data hackathon, which was already impressive enough. But perhaps more impressive is that she is a Jeep Wrangler owner and a thrift store power shopper. So please, everyone, welcome Asmae.
Oh, man. Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's a pleasure to be here. Obviously, I wish I could see you all in person, but it is what it is. So I'm here to talk about my team and I's process through the 2021 NFL Big Data Bowl. And so, yeah, let's get into it. So to paint the picture a little bit, the extent of my football knowledge was really that it was a game comprised of very large adult men who bulldoze one another for 4 quarters, and the point is to score a touchdown or prevent them. And then there's things like fourth downs, which are hysterical because people get really mad about their team's decisions at that point. So that was really the extent of it. And being in the middle of a pandemic, having really nothing to do with my free time, I'm like, okay, yeah, let's get into this American cherished tradition with no knowledge of it. I'm like, it's going to be fine. I'll look at the data, do some EDA. I'll be able to scrap something up together. I was pleasantly surprised that one cannot, in fact, do that. First of all, the size is quite overwhelming. All the different events as well. Apologies for the blurry picture, but I think you can gain an understanding of just how intense this was for me. And I quickly realized that I needed to get a team together, hopefully with people that have a little bit more football knowledge than I did. And then being who I am, I was hoping this was going to be a cute little quarantine hobby, but being who I am, an Aries, I'm like, you know what? No, I want to win this thing. And given the theme of this hackathon, the topic was defense. And, anyone who works in sports will tell you defense is famously hard to quantify. So I knew that with my team, it just wasn't going to be enough. We needed to maybe talk to a subject matter expert, maybe a coach. So I started digging into Twitter and just seeing if there were any active NFL coaches. And I fell upon the wonderful, the one and only Mr. Wade Phillips, a championship winning NFL coach who also was a defensive coach. So once again, me being who I am, I decided to cold DM him on a random November Wednesday night. I was like, hey, I'm Asmae. I'm participating in this thing. I would love like 30 minutes of your time. Yeah. And he was like, sure. So we met him. We got some really good pointers on where to take our analysis, and then the work began. So in terms of our setup, this will be very familiar to all of us who have continued to work during this pandemic. We were all R programmers, so we made sure to get up and running with the latest version of R and use the package to get all the packages we needed and to upgrade them. GitHub, of course, for collaboration. That was a consideration from the get-go, given that we were all in different geographical areas and collaboration was going to be of the essence. Zoom for regular check-ins and deep dives, and Slack for quick communications and code troubleshooting. So once we got our setup, the first and main consideration was the data. So I knew going in that this was going to be pretty big data. On the Kaggle page, it had said that this is an entire season's worth of data. And not only that, it's tracking data. So that has the X and Y locations of every player and the ball 10 times per second. So we're getting real granular here. And I decided to just bind all those 17 weeks worth of data, and it came to be about 3 gigabytes. And I'm like, well, because we're going to be working with GitHub, how do I get this data up? I had never pushed anything that big onto GitHub. Also, I come from healthcare, so that's like a big no-no to ever push data onto there. But I'm like, you know what, let me just try. And GitHub had something to say, and the answer was hell no, because our limit is 100 megabytes. So I'm like, well, okay, I guess it's time to get into some compression. Let's see what's out there. So I did some very unscientific experimentation with RDA, RDS, FST, Parquet, TSV, just things I've like never even heard of. And turns out that Parquet or Parquet has overall the best compression and the fastest read-in time. So shout out to the Arrow developers who may be in attendance. You guys are the bomb. But then it still wasn't enough. I got it down to about 200-ish megabytes, but that's still double GitHub's free size limit. Of course, there's Git large file storage, but me being me and a goodwill power shopper, I hate spending money needlessly. So I decided to continue being stubborn and try to find alternative ways to get my data up on there. And turns out, because the R stats community literally thinks of everything, the R OpenSci developers have created the piggyback package, which is a workaround to get data files up to 2 gigabytes per file onto your GitHub repo. And the way it works is that these files are not handled by Git in any way. They just get on there by being tagged as a GitHub release. And once it's up there, you can read it in pretty easily with just like one line of code. So that was that. The data was taken care of. It's now in our GitHub repo. So it was time to move on to the next stage of our project, which is EDA and feature engineering. And we've gone over those with the presentations so far. Caitlin did a fantastic job just laying out what EDA is and how useful it is. But I would like to just take a moment to talk about how tidyverse and other packages have really been tremendously useful for us in wrangling this very large and quite complex spatio-temporal data set. Many of these are very familiar. We're very familiar with many of these, but just a quick shout out to the Tibble package, which goes a bit underrated because it's well integrated in literally every single one of these. But, you know, Tibbles are a fantastic way to just quickly inspect your outputs. And they're also, quote unquote, like they complain more. So if there's errors, it will tell you about it pretty early on. And that was important because our project at the end ended up being thousands of lines of code long with certain scripts sourcing other scripts. So, you know, Tibbles were really useful in that error alerting functionality because it helped us avoid just error debugging nightmares. Special shout out to not because I'm just a cat person, but really did a lot of work in helping us be efficient in applying functions over vectors and lists. Its cousin, which helped us gain even more speed efficiencies. Skimr from the R OpenSci community, really useful in getting quick summary statistics. Shout out to Janitor for cleaning and quick frequency tables. Lubriday, the greatest of all time. And this package, Memoirs or Memoise, or however you say it, but this is a package we first found out about through the Advanced R book. And what it does is it caches function calls. So what that means is if it has previously seen a set of inputs, it will return the previously computed output. So that's a mouthful just to say that if you have very expensive functions, then certainly look into this package because it will help make everything faster. So shout out to the Memoirs package and the Advanced R book for opening our eyes to many ways in which we can make our code run faster and more efficiently. So after the EDA and the feature engineering stage, we got into the modeling. We decided to go with XGBoost and BART, BART standing for Bayesian Additive Regression Trees. These are models that are very popular in sports and many other industries because they do really well with large data sets. They do well with data sets containing heterogeneous features. They handle interaction effects with minimal involvement from the analyst, and they have shown to have superior predictive performance. We also use tidymodels, but more for the data pre-processing steps. And this was a choice because we were in a time pinch and we had experience fitting models with XGBoost and BART. But I think if we were to do it again, I think we would want a tidymodels pipeline from end to end, just because tidymodels is streamlined. There's less guesswork involved. And once you invest that time upfront to get acquainted with the grammar, then it pays off in terms of iterations, and modeling is inherently an iterative process. It also, tidymodels, as the name suggests, is part of the tidyverse. So you get also all the benefits of functions and pipeability and tibbles. And actually, just a side anecdote, it was quite difficult sometimes wrangling the outputs of these models for further manipulation, like data visualizations or feeding it into other packages for model interpretability. But if we had done our entire process with tidymodels, all the tidymodel outputs are tibbles, and tibbles are very malleable. So definitely a little lesson learned there. And then once our modeling was done, it was time to start thinking about visualization and presentation. Now, visualization was always a part of all the other steps I talked about, but for this competition specifically, it really stressed the quality of the submission, so we knew we had to step up our game there. Of course, given that our entire pipeline was tidyverse, we made heavy use of ggplot2, but really the magic, I think, was when we paired it with ggAnimate, which allows you to animate your graphs. So it's definitely a powerful technique. It can also be misused. I know certainly that when I get exposed to like a new technique, I want to use it on everything ever. And it's with animation, it can be distracting and also not entirely justified. So we made sure to really convince ourselves that this was a value add to our graphics. And given the context of the data that we're working on, which is spatiotemporal, then it made a lot of sense to make use of animation for the purposes of really giving the audience time to digest what is going on in a way that is not overwhelming, given how busy these graphs are. We packed a lot in here, given just the restrictions of the competition. I think they capped it at like 5 visualizations. So because we packed a lot in here, animation was definitely very justified here. Another key player in our visualization roster was the GT package, which I believe stands for Grammar of Tables. So because our pipeline, once again, entirely tidyverse, this was just able to plug right in to our work, because the typical GT workflow starts with a tibble that you can then pipe other arguments to iteratively add more layers to your table. So we were able to very quickly, once we got acquainted with the grammar, very quickly generate, professional, clean looking tables. So in this one, you can see a heat map component added onto it. You can also see the ability to bold certain things or call attention to certain rows. You can even add footnotes. You could even add pictures. In this case, we added pictures of teams. So this was really a huge value add in terms of our submission. Last but not least, we made use of Shiny, and this was a decision based upon the fact that, I think Caitlin said this in her presentation, it's important to get buy-in from people. And one of the first things that your audience will want to see is a peek into your model and your results. So we made the decision to create a Shiny app so that the audience could, for themselves, slice and dice the data and inspect our results. And the way this came together was, I mean, less than an hour we got this together. And we made use also of packages that are built on HTML widgets. So on the left-hand side, this is a plotly graph with crosstalk, and on the right-hand side is a DT table, so fully interactive table. And the magic here is with crosstalk, I think, because you can choose, for example, to select just 3 points from the graph. And when you do, it will automatically filter down that data table. So that was also a really nice functionality that I think our audience appreciated. So what we learned, and learned is in quotation marks here because we all work in data science in a professional capacity. So we were all in on the tools that RStudio offers. However, I think there's like not a replacement for, truly stress testing these tools on, a timed competition with really complex data. So tidyverse and tidymodels, we saw that it enforced good methodology and statistical practice. And I think if we were to do it again, we would definitely go with a tidymodels approach just because it takes out a lot of guesswork and it comes with really sensible defaults. Presentation matters a lot. I really think that our team didn't do anything groundbreaking. We didn't reinvent the wheel, but I think our attention to detail and going the extra step with creating a Shiny app really helped gain a competitive edge. Advanced R book taught us a lot of efficiency tips and deepened our knowledge of how certain packages work, particularly Pur, and exposed us to new packages like Bemoise. So we went through this book together through R for DS book club. So highly recommend if you do want to deepen your knowledge while having fun to join one of those. GitHub, unfortunately, is a necessary evil. It was a pain in the ass for multiple times, but I think we couldn't have done it without GitHub. We would like for next time to maybe create a helper package or two, just because I kind of hinted at this, but we ended up sourcing a lot of scripts multiple times and reusing functions multiple times. And they say when you are doing that, you might as well just package it and make your life a little more streamlined and easier. And I think one thing also is we wanted to make sure that our presentation, everything that was public facing, was as simple as possible without really sacrificing complexity. So we really wanted to tailor the submission to both enthusiasts, hobbyists, but also the professional analysts that were also judging the submission. And last but not least, designate a project manager. This was really helpful because this is all something that we did for fun. We weren't getting paid to do it. Preferably pick someone that isn't afraid to shoot their shot and to cold DM celebrities online. So definitely designate a sort of decision maker in that regard. But really, I saved the most important lesson for last. If you recall, this is my first tweet in the presentation, where I was like, I don't understand what any of these events mean. And someone from the RStats community came to my help and created a cheat sheet. And I think this is just a tremendous testament to the solidarity that exists in our community. And maybe the real treasure and the real lesson is the friends we made along the way. So with that being said, I want to thank my teammates, my role models, really honestly, Marshall, Sydney, Tony, and we did it. We won, and we'll be back. So if you are participating, we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that talk. So that is